I think that the most important thing is the launchpad structure, right? So being able to prove that you have at least one or two products that did well in one of those channels and have a potential to do well somewhere else, I think is the number one thing. Because I think up to $2 million in revenue, you still don't have a real sustainable business. You're still trying to make it. So getting to that 2 million in revenue, proving that you have a product that has good reviews, that is accepted by the market, and that has the potential to do well in other channels.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Humans of Flippa. So today I have with me Fabricio Miranda, who is the CEO of Flippa. And Flippa is an inventory forecasting platform for modern commerce and e-commerce businesses. And Fabricio has had a ton of experience in the offline and online business world. His first major success was with a water treatment company, and which he exited to a major construction group. And now he runs Flippa, which, as mentioned, helps major brands with inventory management. And one thing I noticed about this company is that it started in 2019, and I actually started in the M&A space in 2019. And 2019, then going into COVID, was a crazy time for e-commerce and Amazon FBA, at least from my perspective of helping to transfer these businesses and their assets from the sellers to the buyers, and then just seeing the rise of the bubble and the bubble burst. And Fabricio has seen all of this happen as well from his unique perspective of actually working with those brands. So in this conversation about that, today this is going to be a conversation about e-commerce and what this means for owners, for sellers, for those looking to buy e-commerce businesses today in 2025. So with that said, Fabricio, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing great. Thanks a lot for having me, Nick. I'm very excited for this conversation.
Yeah, same. So can you tell me a little bit more about yourself?
Oh yeah, I can. At my age, I have quite a long history, so I can be brief or long.
I'll try to be
brief. Yeah. So I'm from Brazil originally. I've been an entrepreneur since 26 years old. Last thing I did in Brazil was the sale of a water treatment company, as you mentioned. Decided to move to the US, needed a work visa, had access to capital, so opened a hedge fund in Manhattan called Victory Capital, and was running the hedge fund when I met a guy opening an Amazon store, and that completely changed my world because at the time, that was 2015, I didn't even know that Amazon stores were a thing. I thought that, it was something you would do as an extra just to get extra money if you're like unemployed or, aside from your regular work. I didn't know it was a real business. But this guy I met was really smart and really capitalized. So I knew there was something behind that. And we decided to get together and build this business to sell products on Amazon initially. And we sold $12 million in the first year, but the best thing was that we understood a lot about the dynamics of that new world of which I call modern commerce. And we saw a lot of opportunities. And long story short, Flippa is the third company. We founded a company called SellersFi, and it's in the funding business. We founded a company called Quartile. Quartile today is one of the biggest platforms in advertising. And then I founded Flippa back in 2019. And here I am, almost 6 years into Flippa.
So I don't think we talked about this last time, but you went from water treatment to hedge fund to Amazon FBA. So what made you decide that this was the area that you wanted to be in, of all the different options that you clearly had access to?
Yeah, and I didn't mention before that I was in technology for human resources, involved in infrastructure projects in power in Brazil. So I did a bunch of different things. And what made me decide was I made a decision in 1 second. And that 1 second was when this person, Daniel, who today is the founder and CEO of Quartile, he asked me how much percent of retail I thought was online in 2015. And Jeff Bezos was already one of the richest people on earth. Amazon, one of the biggest companies, and all these boxes coming to my house. And I was sure it was like 40% to 50% of retail, but I knew it was lower than that. So I said 35% to him. and he told me that it was only 8%. When he said that number 8%, I remember at the same time I made that there at that second the decision that I needed to be in this revolution, because I have no question. Today is in the 20s, low 20s, but I have no question that this will be 50, 60 a few years from now. And one thing that I learned with Mark Zuckerberg not with him, I mean hearing him talk about all the apps that were with Facebook in the beginning of Facebook. If you were in a growing business, you grow naturally, even though we're not growing in terms of market share, you grow with that business, right? And that's what's happening with this whole modern commerce space. Just by being there and going from 8% to 24%, 23% today, we see this growth in the company naturally without having to penetrate more market and spend more money to grow. So
yeah. Well, when you describe that, it sounds like a linear path from 8 to 20%, but I guess and maybe it is, but from my perspective, there was also a lot of ups and downs from 2019 to now. Can you share a little bit from your perspective?
Yeah, I think 2019 precipitated a lot of the growth of online retail, and everybody was like, okay, so now that's the new world. Everybody's going to do everything online. And I think people proved resilient to wanting to have personal relationships and wanting to be also in stores and feel things and go to grocery stores, because it's extremely convenient if you think about it, right? I talk to my wife all the time about this because she still goes to 3 to 4 different grocery stores every single month, and I mean potentially every single week. And I'm like, oh, why don't you just order online and it's so much easier, it gets to her house? And she's like, no, but I like to go and see the product and get the product. So I think it's a cultural change that any cultural change in history takes time. And COVID kind of precipitated that. We all forgot that it takes time to change culture, and we all thought that it was going to be that way forever, and it was not. So we saw, offline retail coming back, and the growth trend of online retail being the same growth trend of before COVID, and that was just a bump, and then it continued the same growth trend that we had before, right? So it was a bumpy time, and for the good and for the bad, because for us involved in Flippa is the first company that I raised venture capital, and this whole venture capital world entered a collective schizophrenia where, we raised capital with $60 million valuation when we had like a 1.5 million in ARR at the time, which is ridiculous, and we all believed that was the new normal. And it was a good wake up call to see that no, culture is not going to change like this just because of, an external event.
Mm-hmm. And since you worked so closely with a lot of brands during the sharp spike and then also now, you've seen which brands have survived, which companies have been able to have not survived, which ones have been able to thrive. What is your takeaway as far as the ones who have done well and the ones who did not last?
That's an interesting question, because there's a lot of factors that go around that the answer to the question. We saw the aggregators, for example. So aggregators were one of the biggest bubbles that we saw. And I remember from the inside, at a certain point, 40% of the aggregators were using Flippa. So we were big in aggregators.
You said 40%?
40%, yeah. Of the aggregators were using Flippa. And I knew, I remember talking to the board that we knew that this model was probably not going to survive long term. The way that it was set up, of course, there's a bunch of them, and I'll talk about that, why they're still surviving and thriving. We have a few of them still as our customers. And I knew that it was something that we would, get money from that relationship for a certain time, but I couldn't trust my business in the aggregator market because I knew it was very risky. And in that, I'm wrong in a bunch of things, but in that one, I was right. But what happened was that I think a lot of people downplayed how hard retail is overall, not only e-commerce, but retail overall. And aggregators came to the market with the idea that they were just going to buy brands and consolidate them. I come from a business that is that was based on acquisitions, which was the water treatment business. That business was based on acquisitions, and you grow based on acquisitions, and you have to build. Focus is 100% in operations. When you have an acquisition business, it is 100% in operations. You have to build an operational machine that is able to incorporate each acquisition as quickly as possible and as efficiently as possible, so that you can gain in scale. And I didn't see almost any aggregators doing that. They were all worried about, putting marketing teams and growing, and their operational teams were many times, they were of people from, old school supply chain who didn't understand the dynamics of the new business. And the result was that one. And brands, I think, is the same thing, is the same collective schizophrenia that I was talking about. VCs happen in this Amazon world where everybody thought that this was the new world and Amazon was going to continue to get market share and get to 60% in the next 4 years. And that just didn't play out. And competitive environment became hard for you to make money. So all of that made it a bubble instead of a sustainable business. And whoever, sold their businesses to aggregators at the time did great. And whoever didn't is facing now the reality that it's hard. Retail is a lot more than a bubble. It's for you to succeed, and I'm sure we'll talk a lot about that. But for you to succeed, it takes a lot more than just starting an Amazon store and thinking that you're going to sell it for millions.
Yeah. Well, since we're talking about that right now, let's just get straight to that. So, aggregators, for those who don't know, are backed by capital, backed by world-class specialists in certain aspects of e-commerce or Amazon, whether that's ad management or sourcing, or I don't know, just the different facets. And so to think that kind of organization or that, I don't know, that amount of expertise did not succeed, I guess maybe the thought is, who am I to come in, try to buy or start an e-commerce business right now without that? Like, what are my chances of success? Or what are those who are successful now, what do they need to do differently if they aren't backed by, that level of capital or expertise?
Yeah, honestly, I see a huge opportunity in this new phase of retail moving forward, which is the multi-channel retail phase. In my view, retail and the retail revolution is very close to what happened in the Wild West, right? And, back in the 1800s, when someone said, there's gold in the West, but nobody was sure about it. Nobody knew a lot about it. And only the very adventurous people who have, can take all the risks. So it was the people who didn't have jobs and didn't have families and didn't have experience. And they are the ones who go first there to the West and start digging with like a spoon and trying to find gold with a spoon, because that's all they know, right? It's a spoon. And then news start coming that, yes, there is gold in the West. So there's one confirmation. So people with a little more aversion to risk, but not a lot, start going to the West. And now it's not a spoon anymore. Now it's probably a little hand machine that they build, because they know more, they're more educated. And up to the moment that you have, big companies going and building huge machines, and people who are actually making money are the people providing all these machines instead of the people who are collecting gold because of all the competition. And it's the same exact thing in any industry that starts and has this boom, as we saw in retail. So I think we're getting out of the Wild West phase now, and we're starting to see, with the aggregators, for example, banks starting to understand the business and put money in it, and people from, Morgan Stanley and other companies, big companies, BCG, Boston Consulting Group, start thinking that this is a business that they can work at, and it makes sense for them. And that includes me and my partners that came from other backgrounds and seeing a potential in this business. And then you start having a lot better tools, a lot more. We still, don't take me wrong, we still have a lot of the Wild West. There's a lot of people thinking retail is about hacks. How do we hack your growth into Amazon, and how do you open an Amazon store and try to hack your position? And we'll still have that for a while, but it's less and less. I think reality is striking. It's hard to make money. So I see a huge opportunity now for this new generation of people who are going to come, who are people who are a little more prepared, have a little more experience outside of retail to bring to the table, and are able to get all those brands. There's a lot of gems in this segment, a lot of gems. People who build, a product that is great, but they cannot scale that because they don't know how to scale. They cannot go multi-channel because they don't know how to deal with the complexities. And on the side, more and more tools that are like Flippa, for example, that are powering this whole complexity and solving all of the complexity around this growth. So I'm very bullish about the new phase of modern commerce. I think AI plays a huge role. I'm sure we're going to talk about that. So yeah, I'm bullish about that.
Yeah. So I see that you're careful to not just say you're an e-commerce company or an Amazon FBA company, but you're a modern commerce company. And it seems like you're trying to communicate this kind of new generation of commerce. So how would you describe that? I know you just said we still have a lot of the wild, wild west, but it's less and less of that. I guess in my mind, it's like, what is that?
Yeah, it's thank you for understanding the term, because it's a hard term. I thought about many ways of saying the same thing, and I couldn't find a better term than modern commerce. Modern commerce is the idea that you are selling wherever your customer is. So there's no more this idea of an Amazon seller being, a type of company, and then the D2C brands being another type of company, and the wholesalers being another type of company, and the retailers being another type of company, and the social media products being another type of. That idea that just existed because of the immaturity of this whole process, because it's still Wild West. So people who didn't have experience was like, okay, so Amazon is so easy. For $39, I create an account, and I buy a product at Marshall's. For whoever is not from the US, but Marshall's is a discount retailer that sells things that were overstocked in other places. Then you buy something at Marshall's at a discount and try to sell on Amazon, for a buck of profit. It's so easy to do. So yeah, it's natural that a lot of people are going to try to do this Amazon game. And the D2C is on the other spectrum, is investors thinking, okay, so to sell something, I need to have a physical location, and it's very expensive to have a physical location. What if I get all the money that I spend in physical location and I put in marketing, and I create a virtual company that can sell things online, and then everybody poured capital into that, raised billions of dollars, and you saw those, Allbirds, Casper, and all these companies going that route, Warby Parker, and Dollar Shave Club. So there are a bunch of D2C brands. And then you had on the in the middle of that, you had like the wholesalers, which is the legacy retail that sells through Walmart or Whole Foods or whatever, trying to keep their businesses going on and not knowing anything about online, not even knowing how to start online. So that was that moment of the Wild West retail. And we got to a moment where all of these people understood that it makes no sense to be single channel. There has never been a brand in history that was like, okay, I'm a Walmart brand. That has never existed, right? You sell wherever you can. The more you are exposed to customers, the more you're going to sell, and the more successful you're going to be. So the Amazon sellers understood that on Amazon, it's great because Amazon gives you the customer. But because it gives you the customer, it also gives your competitor the customer. So it gets very competitive, and it's a race to the bottom in terms of profit. So Amazon is an amazing launch pad. Amazon gives you millions of customers to showcase your product, but you cannot make a profitable, sustainable, profitable business on Amazon alone nowadays in the modern commerce. You need to have brand more and more. Then to build a brand, you have to have your website. But then on the website, it's extremely hard to take customers to the website, and you have very low volumes. So you don't have volume. So it's great. You're building a brand, but with no volume. So you need volume. So you need to go wholesale. Wholesale plays a huge role there because it gives you the volume. Even if you don't make any money in wholesale, it gives you enough volume to make money in other places because you gain scale with your suppliers, with the transportation, with the warehousing, etc. Right? So it's a great role. But then why, retail still has its value because it's where you experience the products. You're able to try it on and see and touch it. And social media, you're able to get the recognition and kind of it's a social approval from influencers and stuff. And so all of that is part of the same thing. And it's going to be part of the same thing more and more, moving forward in the next, 10 to 15 years. I don't know exactly how long it will take, but next 10 to 15 years, I think is this consolidation of retail as modern commerce, as this omni-channel game instead of this, pulverized and fragmented game that has been played up to now.
Yeah, definitely. You still see, I think you're right. It's mostly because people could understand the concept of Amazon FBA as a business, and I pay for a Seller Central account, and I do this, and I make 30% margin, maybe, or pay for ads, and eventually I get organic ranking. Like that system all made sense to them, and that still exists clearly if you look at any brokerage platform that's selling businesses. It's segmented in a way that customers can understand it and know how to search for those things. So let's say you're a buyer now and you're looking at acquiring a commerce business, an e-commerce business, I should say. And knowing your perspective on this, what are you looking for to acquire, knowing that you're going to grow it? I kind of sense, I can imagine what you would say, but what would you be looking for specifically if you had, say, $100,000 to $500,000 to acquire something?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is the launch pad structure, right? So being able to prove that you have at least one or two products that did well in one of those channels and have a potential to do well somewhere else, I think is the number one thing. Because I think up to $2 million in revenue, you still don't have a real sustainable business. You're still trying to make it. So getting to that 2 million in revenue, proving that you have a product that has good reviews, that is accepted by the market, and that has the potential to do well in other channels, I think that's the number one thing. Because I think being able to get the launchpad and expand it is where I think the money will be moving forward. The wholesale play for volume, the D2C play for brand, all of that is going to add a lot of value to the package. And if a company hasn't gotten there yet, and the founder doesn't have the potential to do that because of lack of knowledge and preparedness and stuff, I think that's where the opportunity is in retail nowadays.
Yeah, definitely. So you have started companies that address these different areas: ad management, inventory management. It seems like last time we talked about, and this is kind of the conversation that we're having right now, which is about inventory management. What you said was some of these companies, these aggregators, they mistakenly assumed that throwing money into marketing was going to be the solution, but really it's an operations thing that they needed to prioritize. So what's your perspective, knowing that you own and started these different areas, these different companies specializing in these different areas? What's your perspective on what is most important here?
Yeah, it was less structured than that, but in the end, we ended up building like a tripod, which is capital, advertising, which is sales, and inventory, which is the tripod of retail, right? So you need capital. It's a long capital cycle. So we need capital. We need advertising, especially in modern commerce, because if you go online, If you go offline and you're selling a product with Walmart, you just have to be able to get beyond the gatekeeper and get your product to the shelf. And the customer is going to be walking at a Walmart store and will see your product and will get your product and buy it. So advertising is not directly connected to that transaction. Advertising is just to solidify the brand and make it in a way that it's easier for the customer to connect with that product, but it's not a one-to-one relationship. When you get to online retail, to e-commerce, you have a product. If you don't advertise, you're going to be on page 56. Nobody's going to know the existence of your product. So advertising is intrinsic to the model, to the business model. If you don't advertise, there's no way for you to succeed. And there's a one-to-one relationship. You're able to trace one specific sale to an advertising campaign and the moment and keyword and everything else. So advertising becomes extremely important in this business model. And that's why Quartile has succeeded. It's a big company nowadays. It has 400 plus employees. So it's a big business at the moment. And then you have inventory. Inventory, when I was operating the Amazon brand, I understood that every time I made money or lost money, it was related to inventory. And I was never involved with retail, so I had zero experience. It was just I was learning and common sense and talking to people and with the tools that we implemented, I ended up understanding that money is made at the purchase of the product, not at the sale of the product. So if you buy a product, the right product at the right time in the right quantity, take it to the right place with the right cost and with the right quality, that product is going to make money. There's no way for you to lose money on the product. But if any of those rights, which are 6 rights that I keep talking about all the time, if any of those rights are wrong, you're going to have a tough time. Even if you're a marketing wizard, you're going to have a tough time making money. So get overstocked of a product. You're not going to make money. You're going to lose all your money in that process. You have trapped capital in inventory. You have a lot more costing storage. And many times you have to, get rid of some of those products because of that cost. You're going to lose money. Get stocked out of a product. You're going to lose money. So lose sales in the case, right? So inventory is where you either make or lose money. And when I understood that, and when I understood how complex it was, because retail moving more online, sales go digital, advertising goes digital, the customer goes digital, customer service goes digital, payment goes digital, but inventory is still physical. So it's only natural that as part of the business model of retail, inventory will be at the center of all complexities moving forward. There's nothing that's going to be more complex than inventory. And that's why I decided to build Flippa at the time. And I think it's been the most humble and hardest journey in my entrepreneurial life because it is extremely hard to solve inventory in modern commerce. But I think, I like to see us as positioned as one of the leaders, if not the leader in this segment today. And I think this is going to be the problem of my life. As I said to my investors, I'm vested in this. I'm ready to be in this for 10 more years or 20 more years if needed, because I got really passionate about solving this extremely hard problem.
Yeah. And that's a big thing to say, just given the number of companies that you've been through, just having an exit and just everything that comes with all of that, for this to be one of the biggest challenges. I think it's telling about just how real the challenge is. So, yeah. And I think a lot of people will hear things like inventory issues coming out of or shipping issues coming out of China, just different. I mean, thinking of it from the perspective that you just said, where you make or lose money from the purchase of the inventory, makes you feel a bit like it's scary to think that it's kind of out. It feels like it's out of your control. So what are the challenges that you're seeing now in 2025 related to inventory? And I guess, is there a simple solution around those challenges, the main challenges that you're seeing?
Yeah, it's very interesting that you say that it's out of your control, because it is a little bit that sense when you operate with the mindset that you have to nail your inventory decisions. And the way I see, and I think commerce will evolve towards, is that you don't have only the inventory lever to make sure that you're not overstocked or out of stock. An overstock or an out of stock is a mismatch between inventory and sales. So it's two things. It's not one. You don't have inventory, and inventory certainly evaporates and then you go to zero. It goes to zero because you sold more than you could sell, right? Or more than you could replenish. Depends on how you see it. But it's a mix of sale and inventory. And the mistake all the brands in history have been making, and there's a reason for that, is that they only use the inventory lever, and it's completely separate than the sales lever. And the reason for that is that in the history of commerce, inventory forecasting was something that was done by the distributors, by the Walmarts or Targets, and etc. They would be the ones coming to you and saying, "Oh, I'm going to order this much from you." Of course, it's a little more complex than that. So if someone is in a big company, please don't take me wrong. I know it's a lot more complex than that, but simplifying for the sake of the example, the complexity of knowing what was sold in any store at any time, that was information that the brands didn't even have. So it's really hard for brands to actually do the type of forecasting that they need to do today, where they do have that part of information. So brands were, there's a marketing team doing promotions and advertising and a lot of merchandising inside of the retailers. And it was all about a world of sale that was completely detached from the world of operations. Operations was pretty much reactive. It's, how much do we have to send to Walmart this year? We have to send 12 million units. I don't know. Okay, so let's try to bring the 12 million units and take it to Walmart. That was the game. And now the game is not that anymore. Now you are the one as a brand that have to understand your demand, have to project the demand, have to understand how many units you have today, what channels you're selling, and if you have subscriptions, kits and bundles, and all the complexities that go around inventory, and you have to make a decision. So we are still making that decision with the same mindset of the past, which is two completely siloed areas, one area of inventory being reactive and one area of advertising and marketing making sales decisions completely blind to what's going to happen to inventory. So the result is that. Result is brands that you see making advertising and doing promotions just to run out of stock 2 weeks from today, which is the dumbest possible thing on earth. Because you are spending more money, you're reducing your margin, and you're running out of stock and running all the problems of being out of stock. So I think moving forward, there is a huge element of this, the two levers starting to work together. And systems like Flippa bring that to light. When you make a sales decision, being a promotion, being an inventory, an advertising campaign, that should be in light of how much inventory you have available and how that promotion or advertising campaign will impact your future availability. If you're going to run out of stock, you shouldn't do that. Of course, you shouldn't do that. And if you're going to run out of stock independently of it, you should do the opposite. Let's manage your sales. Let's reduce advertising, increase price a little bit, and hold on because the running out of stock is really bad, right? So I think those things are going to play a huge role in this modern commerce, and all the complexities. And there's a bunch. There's complexities now, geopolitical complexities that are coming into the game now, right? So what is the relationship going to be with China that has production of most of the products? What if Trump really gets the Panama Canal and starts dominating that? Right. Will China be able to send the ship to Los Angeles, which is, China to Los Angeles, no, I'm sorry, to Miami or not? So all of those things are complexities, but in the end of the day, those are things that you cannot control. They're uncontrollable. And if you try to make your decisions based on things that you cannot control, you're going to go the wrong route. The route is, there are things that you cannot control, and there are things that you can control. What can you control? What you can control is, let's make the best possible. Let's have the visibility, make the best possible predictions, try to make the decisions at the right time, and bring things, and then start playing with the sales lever to adjust the course until you're able to bring the next batch.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really interesting, thinking about just pulling different levers. it makes you feel like, I think the feeling of a lack of control, as you said, comes from the thought that you only have one lever to pull, which is
Yeah.
when to buy inventory and how much to buy. Just the inventory lever. But I think having a go-to of the different things that you can do, just makes you feel like you have things that you can control.
Yeah. Yeah, and sorry to interrupt you, but I think the most important thing is the shift in mentality, right? So everybody thinks, okay, so if I purchase this, what is going to be my stock out risk? And I don't see that way. I see, if I purchase this, what is going to be the risk that I have to start using the sales lever? So what is going to be the risk that I'll have to adjust my campaigns, that I change my price? It doesn't mean that you're going to be out of stock. It means that you will have to use the second lever. It's almost like a safety pin that you have there.
Yeah, going to the next phase.
Pin, right?
Yeah.
So it changed the perspective in your mind if you think that way, instead of thinking, what is the risk of running out of stock? Because if the risk is running out of stock, I'm going to just pile up in inventory. And that is the other problem. All companies that die in retail, they die rich in inventory, poor in cash. You see all those, end of business clearance, right? You go all the time, you see that. They're always rich in inventory, poor in cash. So that is the game that people have to understand. It's not a risk of running out of stock. Get whatever you need to get and start playing with the lever of sales.
Got it. Okay. So let's shift to another topic, which we touched on last time. You said you didn't realize how important brands would become as part of this. I know we didn't even talk about brands at all. We've been talking more about the operational side of things and just making sure that that's down and pulling the different levers. For going into the age of modern commerce, what is your perspective on the importance of brands and, I guess, surviving and standing out as a company now in this age?
Yeah, that's one that I was wrong. In 2016, approximately 2016, I started saying that the future of the world was brandless, because I was seeing this rise of private label companies, and I was involved in this private label world, and I thought, customers are more and more going to search for what they need, not for what they know. And so in that example, going to Amazon and putting, sneakers for men's, running marathon, I don't know, something like that, instead of Nike, whatever model. And I was sure that was the future. And more I've been proven that that is not how the future is playing out, especially because that world is a world that is extremely competitive. And what happens is that you have no differentiation, right? So it's a race to the bottom in terms of profits. So more and more, I think people are understanding that owning your audience and being able to control your narrative are very important things. And those attributes are brand attributes in the end of the day. So it's a lot less about the logo of the company, but a lot more about controlling the audience and controlling the narrative. And I think that's how the world is playing out. I was 100% wrong on that one, apparently. I don't know if it's going to change in the future, but today my vision is that the world is going to move towards, again, having an importance of brands. It's going to be very hard for you to build something that generates reasonable profits if you're just in a commodity world selling things that anyone else can sell. But let's see 10 years from now if I am right or wrong on that one too. So.
Yeah, definitely. And so going back to the example of, you acquire a business, that you want to expand to be in every different facet of commerce, and you want to turn this commodity into a brand. How, I guess this becomes more of a branding conversation, so we won't spend too much time on it, but what would you do in reality to make that happen?
That's a good point. I'm not a specialist, so I know I had a webinar today with only marketers, and they're so much more clever than me in that than I am. But I think the thesis that the product needs to be something that is not a commodity. I think it's an important thesis for my role, my play. If I was the one investing in a company, I have friends who go the extreme other way. They want commodities, but I have friends with a thesis, for example, on the B2B side. Even one friend that was a high executive on Amazon, and he keeps saying, the future. I mean, the future. I mean, future in terms of next few years. The opportunity is going to be on a B2B side. On how do you cater to all these big companies buying, the sheets of paper or paper clips for the companies, or coffee or whatever, and how do you transform that into a business inside of Amazon? There is this thesis that it's more about commodities that you're going to sell in volume. But my play would be, do you have a product that is unique in some way that can become a brand? How do we make that leap from an Amazon play, which is just, I see Amazon as a launch pad. I know that there are a bunch of people making hundreds of millions on Amazon. I think very rarely they're still only on Amazon. It's likely that they are in other places and they just made hundreds of millions because they were able to enter Whole Foods or Walmart or Home Depot. But they still do. So I have some clashes on LinkedIn with some of them because they are like, no, there is an Amazon game. Yeah, maybe for a few brands, there's still an Amazon game. There will always be for a few brands, but it's for the 0.1% or maybe 1% of the total. The 99% don't have a play anymore. It's a launch pad, and you have to grow from there. Right? So I think this aspect of building a brand is an important one that I didn't talk about.
Got it. Yeah. So like the thought of moving off of Amazon and what that looks like, your own site, your own website, an email list, communicating with the customer, being able to have that conversation with them. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, cool. And last time we also did touch briefly, and I was hoping to talk a little bit more about this, but AI's impact on e-commerce and kind of what you're seeing and what I guess the opportunity is for a lot of new and existing sellers.
Yeah, I've been entrenched in AI for a while now. We have advisors that are in big AI companies, and I learn a lot about this, like even the technical intricacies of AI, going, how models operate, what is good use cases for models, what are bad use cases for models. So I feel that although I'm not a huge specialist that can talk about AI, I think I am prepared to at least have a vision on how AI will impact the business that we have here. And I think there's a lot, AI is seen a lot as the GPT world, like what ChatGPT made popular, which is pretty much a prompt that you are giving to an AI model, and the AI interacts with that prompt and gives you answers. And it's pretty incredible what it can do when it has use cases that are adherent to it. So, for example, you have the document that you want to develop, and that AI was trained with hundreds of millions of documents, and is able, because of that context that it has in hundreds of millions of documents, it's able to understand that when you're talking about, they're saying word A, usually in hundreds of millions of documents, word B comes after that, and then word C comes after that. And it's actually letter by letter, but the idea that it builds something out of something that it has context of is extremely important to understand how it will play out in retail. And honestly, I think it's not there yet for really interacting with decisions. So aside from improvements in user experience that you're seeing, that you can make things easier because of this interface that is a text interface, much easier for you to extract things that are complex. Aside from that, in terms of decision making, it's not there yet. Simply because there is still and honestly, I think there will never be a full context about what's going on. Each time I need to place an order, that order is pretty unique because it's that supplier, that person inside of the supplier, that time of the year, and that quantity for that specific product going to that specific inventory location, it's really hard to replicate all the aspects involving a purchase order, for example, which is when you're purchasing products from your supplier. It's really hard to replicate that in the other million of examples that it has. So because of that, I think for decision making, it's still really hard to apply AI. What we're seeing in AI is in the machine learning part, which has existed for a lot longer than the GPT world. But in machine learning, we're seeing improvements in a bunch of different things, and we're testing all those improvements. There are improvements in user experience also that we're testing. There is one use case that I think is really good for AI, which is mapping, data mapping. And I deeply believe that data mapping will be critical for the success of the second generation of AI, because retail has faulty data by nature. Retail is one of the only industries, I can't think of any other, that when you get the right data, that data is still wrong. Let me explain why. Let's assume you got data for sales of a product, right? And it is the accurate data, and you check the sales are perfectly correct every single day, so you do have the right data of the product. But that product had a stock out at a certain moment, or had an influencer campaign that sales just went up. If the AI doesn't have the context that on those days that product sold zero, not because it had zero demand, but because it had a stock out, AI will not be able to understand that it shouldn't sell zero. And therefore, when I predict the future, I should not predict zero again, right? Mm-hmm. So is the contextualization of the historical data for retail is extremely important. And there's endless things. There's weather. There is. I was thinking about an event the other day. I read that somewhere, I don't remember where, all like the Subway store or something like that. I don't remember, but like Dunkin' Donuts ran out of donuts like in the morning because it didn't understand that there was a Taylor Swift concert nearby. And because of that, the demand was times 100 on that day because everybody was there for the concert, right? Yeah. How can AI understand that? How can AI see the data from that Dunkin' Donuts on that day and understand that it was Taylor Swift concert? We have to feed all the list of all the concerts that happened. And then we need to feed a list of all the weather in all the locations and in every single aspect. Because of that, I think it's extremely hard for AI to actually impact retail without the layer of data contextualization. And I am absolutely in love with that subject, data contextualization. There's a company called Scale AI that does the contextualization of data for Tesla cars, for example. So Tesla sends Scale AI a raw footage of what the cameras of the Tesla is seeing. And Scale AI is the one understanding, oh, okay, this is a tree. And is telling Tesla that that is a tree, and therefore you cannot hit that thing. And this is a cone, and this is a person, and the person is walking, and is walking at certain speed. So Scale AI is it's data. They call it data tagging, but I call it data contextualization. Is contextualizing what's happening so that Tesla's AI system can work better because now it has data that is contextualized. And I think retail is the same thing. And I'm fascinated by this contextualization part. I think AI will play a huge role there in mapping data correctly, contextualizing the data, and et cetera.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And yeah, just thinking about it in the context of a car, it's real-time, very real-time information that it needs to make, maybe arguably even more so than an inventory purchase, and some would think. So all to say, this as it is right now, this does not replace Flippa. So can you tell me a little bit about Flippa and who is the ideal customer or owner to use this tool or this platform?
Yeah, about AI substituting, I think AI will superpower what we do. It's already superpowering with the set of machine learning tools that we have available today. And I don't see a future where AI will be this big person, big whatever entity solving all the problems of all the companies. I think it's the opposite. I think AI will move towards having extremely specialized applications. Of course, big models like GPT, ChatGPT, Gemini, and Claude, and Grok, and all of them, big models will power a lot of those decisions, but companies will build ultra specialized solutions on top of those models to solve specific use cases. And I see Flippa is one of those companies that is going to get all the benefits of all these models and solve specific use cases inside of inventory. And there's a whole aspect of user experience also that you don't want to go to a ChatGPT and say, what do I need to order for this product, and getting text or a table with the decision. And it's not a good interface for making decisions. The better interface is just going to a page that already has a chart, being able to click on a shortcut or filter and see everything combined, and click on a button, make the decision, and have it executed. It's a lot better than, how much do I need to order? Okay, so right. Please send, create a PO, please send the order. It's not a good user experience. So I think there's a layer of user experience also. And at Flippa, we are already pretty big in being multi-channel commerce. So we already have all the multi-channel capabilities. So you can connect a bunch of different channels into Flippa. We're going to get that data, and we're going to help you. And when I say we, it's the system is self-serve. So you just go to the system, and you are going to start selecting, what inventory locations feed each one of the channels that you have. And if you have a storage location feeding another location, you can kind of build your supply chain. And once you do that, the data is all mapped in the back end, and we start giving you the suggestions of what you need to do. We migrated from a decision-making tool, which tries to decide for you, to a decision support tool, which is a decision, it helps you make the decision. So we have a bunch of features on that front to help you make those decisions. And what we're doing now is expanding integrations, basically. So we're expanding now to a lot of different integrations to automate a lot more of this process of data gathering, data mapping, and contextualization of data. So 2025 is a lot about that. How do we set us up for success for 2026 and beyond in this new era of AI? How do we become an amazing data platform that is able to get data from multiple sources, make sense of it, connect it, contextualize it, and feed very robust AI algorithms for helping in decision making? And that's the direction we're moving towards.
Yeah. Wow. There's so much stuff going on right now. I'm sure we could talk about a lot of this for a lot longer. We are a little bit past the hour, so in respect of your time, I'll end this by just asking, how can people learn more about Flippa? How can people learn more about you, or just connect in the most meaningful way here?
Yeah, awesome. Flippa is, if you just go to flippa.com, so it's FLIEBER.com, and you'll learn a lot about Flippa. I always give my personal email address, fm@flippa.com. I think I love being in contact with people, so feel free to send me an email. If you want to connect on LinkedIn, is the LinkedIn URL, and Fabricio Miranda, you're going to find me there too. I am very vocal on LinkedIn, so it's also a good platform for us to talk if you go there.
Awesome. And I'll leave all of those links that you just described in the show notes, so people can just click on those for ease of access. But Fabricio, thank you so much. This has been an awesome conversation, and I just really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you so much. I had a lot of fun. I think the conversation with you went deeper than most times, and I love talking. So hopefully, I added value to some people hearing.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it was an awesome conversation. Thank you again. And thank you to the audience. We will see you on the next one.